Hello, 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 and welcome to class number 2. I'm Sherry Hemstreet of thesherryhemstreet.com, and I am so thrilled you are here. We have so much to get into. I'm so excited. The first class was on Capricorn and Pluto because for us to really understand where we're going, we have to understand where we've come from and what we've been through. And through connecting the dots, piecing the pie together, we can get a fuller, more expansive look at what's going on and where we're going to end up and what our next 20 years is going to look like. So I have my notes. I am ready to dive in. I hope you are thrilled to be here. Get ready to take a lot of notes because we're going to have them going on. And we are going to focus on this class, we're going to specifically focus on what it's going to look like collectively for the next 20 years, because to understand how we're going to make money, we have to understand what the world looks like and how it's operating and where the values are shifting, where the energy is shifting, and where people's attention and priorities are going to lie. So it sounds like a lot, and because it is, but it's going to be very helpful. And we're going to wrap everything up, and you're going to make your own personal plan in class 3. Class 3 is coming up right after this. And so in class 3, we are going to go over the nitty gritty of you personally and what this is going to look like for you and ways that you can optimize this and really, really just maximize profits and income for the next 20 years with Pluto and Aquarius. But today we're diving into the collective because we have to understand what is going on as a whole. So we're going to first begin historically because that's where we glean the most insight. We've already been through that. And the first few years of Pluto and Aquarius that we're going to focus on, it's, how do I say this? The first few years are the catalyst that is really going to set the tone. Like, the first few years is going to bring us everywhere we're going to go. The first few years are going to be the most monumental changes. So this means there's some major adjustments coming, and this means that we'll be looking at more than just Pluto in Aquarius, because there are some other players on the stage, and they're equally important for this role over the next couple of years, and they're contributing to the overall experience and transformation and shift of the next 20 years. So if you're still with me, hang in there. Forgive me, I've been getting over I have no idea what I'm getting over, but I'm getting over something, and that's good. So that's what we have. So Aquarius symbolizes the people, the masses, the tribes, the communities. It's the collective, like it's all of the world, all of humanity. It's all of a country. It's all of a community. It's all of a state. It's all of a town. It's all of a neighborhood, right? So Aquarius covers from very meta to very minor, granular, right? Like, what's the smallest particle there? Like, if we're going meta and then we're narrowing down, it covers all aspects of this. And Pluto, and I'm sure you know this, but Pluto symbolizes destruction and restructuring. It's the very definition of a phoenix rising. The last time, I know this is going to get a little serious here. The last time that Pluto was in Aquarius was in 1777 through 1797. So another 20 years. And prior to that, it was 1583 was the time before that Pluto was in Aquarius. So to give you an idea of what this looks like, it's about every 250 years. So as you may have heard, the United States is having her Pluto return, and I'm sure you can imagine what that's going to bring and what that's going to look like, because if it's a return, it's returning to the first time Pluto was in this space. So if you look back to 1777, what was going on? I'll give you like one guess. We're going to get to that. So if you bring Pluto and Aquarius together, right? These two together create people being the cause of bringing down the system. I know this is probably exciting to a lot of you, so that it can be restructured to serve the people of the period. And this is exciting to me because I can see, as a psychic, as an astrologer, as a healer, as somebody who is source connected, I have a divine direct connection to God. I hear from him, we converse. I have so much excitement for this because so much is going on in this energy that we have been working toward for so many years. So this is part of an evolutionary process. This is where the power goes to the people. Now, if you've followed me for any amount of time, I believe it was back in 2015 when I introduced my soul book editing, my soul book modality. Um, and I'm the only person on the planet that teaches that. So it was given to me by God, who taught it to me. And he gave it to me with the premise that I was to give it to the people, to teach it to the people. And the premise of it was to put the power back in the hands of the people. Restore the power to the people, is what I kept hearing. Put the power back in the hands of people, is what I kept hearing. And I didn't understand that. And so I asked about it. And he said, well, you know what the Akashic records are? And I said, yes. And he taught me the entire process. He goes, well, you know what the Akashic records are? I said, yes. And he said, and you know that they're more of an Eastern modality, an Eastern tradition. And I said, yes. And he goes, and you know that it started with only a few people. And I said, yes. Right? Like a lot of yeses here. And he's like, well, it didn't actually go the way it was intended. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And he said, well, it's all good, right? He said, but when I taught it to them, when I gave it to them, they kept it for themselves. So this was taught to people in an Eastern tradition because those were at one point the most open to these modalities, given that over in the West we're very Christ-centered, very Christ-oriented, and very steeped in Christian tradition, which doesn't necessarily include things like the Akashic records. And so he simply said they kept it for themselves. Like they used it for their benefit, and they used it to help people, but they never released it to the full expansion, and they never released it to other people. So with that, he didn't teach more. Now, the interesting thing is, I was taught the soul book editing in 2015, and then I was taught more again in, it was just a few years ago, maybe after the pandemic started. And then just recently, I was given another upgrade in the soul books. So I'm coming to understand that when God gives you something or teaches you something that you give to others, there is expansion to it. It doesn't just start and end in one space. So I never asked God, but my assumption there is that, he doled out some to see how they would be with it. And when they didn't follow through in the way he expected or the way he intended, then he just didn't give any more in that area, which I found to be interesting. I just found that to be very interesting because, like, who would have known? So anyway, he said they kept it for themselves, and he gave it to others as well. Before giving it to me, he gave it to others. One of them I even met a lady that learned this. And so you might be wondering, right, at this point, what is the difference between me and all these people? It's very simple. I was willing to not keep it for myself. I was willing to teach it. I was willing to share it. I was willing to put it to good. It was not just for me. And with this, we are now entering a time where people want their power restored. People feel that they have given up pieces of their power and pieces of their autonomy and pieces of their sovereignty that they want to recall back into themselves. And this is cyclical, right? Like they've given it up for far too long. And some of the notable things, let's just go back to some of the things that happened around 1777 when Pluto was in Aquarius. So the Copernicus heliocentric model of the universe was developed. I love that. The Protestant Reformation of the church happened. There was the Tyrone Rebellion. See if you notice like a theme here. See if you notice a theme here. The War of the French Succession, the French Wars of Religion. We're getting into the themes here. It's when the Japanese invaded Korea. I might have that wrong. That sounds later, but I could totally, like, I could just be making that up. It's either or. Just go either or with that. The Cologne War, the 80 Years' War, the Anglo-Spanish War, the Tartar Rebellion, the Cossack Uprising, which is Russian, and the Moroccan Revolt. There's a lot there. There's a lot there, and there's underlying themes, right? So the focus that you're seeing is on reformation, restructuring, rebellion. It's on tearing down systems and structures and concepts. And there's a lot of rebellion and a lot of restructuring. So the systems can be built better, because while all systems start from the ground up and they're built and they built and they're built and they're built well and they work, there's not every part of them that always works, right? So when you build a system conceptually or societally or in whatever we're talking about here, society structures, we can develop something and we can go, oh yeah, this is great, this is perfect, this works. That's the very beginning of the building of the system. But as you build things, everything isn't quite so great. You find out as you go through it. And that's the evolutionary process. And so you can't just keep, it's kind of like software, right? Like you can't just keep editing software and patching on codes and fixes to make it work. Eventually you break it. You have to break it, or you just have to start over, right? Like eventually if you just keep putting codes and patches on it, it's not going to run right and it's going to break. And that's when you need to start over. So it's very much like that. Everything goes in a cyclical nature of structure and destruction, right? Part of the structuring process is that some of these things will work for society or people or an organization, like I said, and then others will not work as well for everyone. So it's not encompassing in the way that it solves all the problems or supports all of the people. And a system, a societal structure, has to really be able to withstand the test of time. And they don't, because they're not meant to. This is the evolution of humanity. So the Pluto is the ultimate phoenix rising. It's the ultimate phoenix energy. It's the burn it down and build it up. It's the destroy everything and then create what you want, right? Like you have a clean slate. And Pluto, very important to know this, Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio, and Scorpio symbolizes death and rebirth and cycles of metamorphosis and chrysalis. And Pluto creates a moment of stagnancy. And this happens, and you've probably felt it, but you've not been able to like pinpoint it or identify it or nail it. And so when Pluto creates a moment of stagnancy, because Pluto is so far out there, it's almost like everything just freezes for a moment. And you're moving in real time and everything is moving in real time. But it's the feeling of like being stuck, expanding. And it feels like you're stuck. But this is the frozen energy of Scorpio, of Pluto. It creates stillness. Like when you're stuck, you might be moving, you might be doing things, but there's complete stillness where you want there to be movement and change and progression. Think back to a time that you've experienced that. We've all been stuck. Scorpio slows things down. It freezes it in stillness. And in the space of being stuck, what we typically do is try to fix it rather than examine it. Once it can be really examined, and that's what the stillness is for, that's what the frozen state is for. Once you are in that space of it being still and frozen, and it feels like everything is stuck, much like it might have felt for the past few years, or not, depending on where you are, what's going on for you, this space will feel amplified and it'll be felt deeply. And when you feel it within yourself, it's going to feel like something wants to come out of you, right? Like you want something different. Like you just know this isn't it. You know this isn't the answer. And we've all been there. I think we can all know and pinpoint a time. And so it's in this space where the structures and the substructures of society, of governments, of cities, of movements, of anything that has become stale or stagnant is demolished and restructured. This is where societies are reformed. This is where revolutions happen. And what's happening, the underlying vein of what is happening, is that people are fighting to have their personal power restored. Because you see, in this space, your soul knows when you have given up too much of your autonomy, of your sovereignty, of your personal power. And it's this balance that we've been trying to get over the years. Now, we've given up this personal power, right? Nobody took it from us. We gave it up as a collective because we were all in agreement about how things were, or we took that for how things had to be. You can look back at history and you can see that. So what happens is when we want this personal power returned, we want our own power back in our hands. And we've given it to all the different players in society, right? We've given it to the corporations or the top tier earners or the different movements that we've been through, like the industrial age, right? And the collective point that we're entering is where everyone is going to accept more personal power than they ever have, because you see what's been happening since 1900 and even 1776 is we want more power, and yet we keep giving our power away. So we are now at a culmination point of where we are ready to receive and utilize our power in a way that no one on the planet has ever experienced. And it's an evolutionary way from the way Pluto and Aquarius interacted in 1583 or 1777, because now this is 2024. And we've gone through this evolutionary period, right? Like we've gone through the air age, we've gone through the space age, we're now in the information age, right? Everything is spiraling up so we can advance and evolve. And so on one hand, we've had the experience of a power, the multitude of power, the majority of power being with a few, and people fight for it to be many. And the people who are the few don't necessarily want to give it up. And you see this, right? Like you see corporations raising and expanding their profit margins because they see the writing on the wall. You see all kinds of things happening because the writing is on the wall. This is obvious to most people. I'm not telling you anything you haven't heard or you don't know. I'm putting it into an organized fashion for you. Pardon me. Okay, I think we're good. So essentially this quest for power is a tug. It's a tug and war, right? It's like a back and forth. We take some and then we give some back because we're like, "Oh, that's a lot of power. Where do we go now?" And then we're like, "Oh no, we want some more of that back." And then we're like, "Ooh, that's a lot of power. This idea sounds great. We'll give you back some of the power." And so go back to the American Revolutionary War of 1777, right? So I told you what happened in 1583, but let's talk about what happened in 1777. Did I actually add the... No, I didn't. Okay. Sometimes my notes get a little wonky. All right, so Pluto's in Aquarius. It's 1777. We have the French Revolution, the American Revolutionary War, the Haitian Revolution, the Irish Rebellion. We have the Dutch Patriot Revolt, the Polish Uprising. And then we have the Industrial Revolution. And I find the Industrial Revolution to just be monumental. And we could add to that the American Medical Association, because that was the thing that came after that, right? And so obviously the Industrial Revolution was in the 19th century, or it was in the 1900s. And the American Medical Association, or ADA, American Doctors Association, that was all in the 1900s. But these are very key points because you can see how things keep changing, right? And because the Industrial Revolution set us off for where we are now, as well as many other things that we thought were going to be better for us, and yet we find out that they aren't, and then we're like, no, this is not working. And so this is how society goes. This is how the collective goes. Now, keeping all of this in mind, we are in an absolutely spectacular time historically. Absolutely spectacular. Because we have these outer planets on the move. That is pretty monumental. And what happens with outer planets is they are slower moving and they are all changing signs at once, which rarely happens, right? So we have Pluto, we have Neptune, we have Saturn, and we have Uranus, forgive me. I know. What a time to get sick, huh? And so some of these outer planets are slow moving and they take up to 80 years to make an orbit, a revolution around our solar system. But then some of them are outer planets that move as fast as making their orbit in 18 months. Saturn is usually between 18 months and 24, 26 months, give or take. And they all have these retrogrades that they go through that can sometimes make it feel longer, or it's kind of like the monkey wrench in the whole thing, right? So the faster moving ones we get to experience is they travel through and transit through the slower moving ones. But when the slower moving ones change signs, that's when it gets very intense. See, it's less intense when the faster moving planets move over and transit the slower moving planets because it's temporary, it's short lived. But when the longer transiting signs move from a house to a house in a different sign, it's a whole different energy. But the main planet that I want to talk about now is Uranus. I love Uranus. A lot of people don't like Uranus. I love Uranus. I love Pluto. So two of my favorite planets, which is funny because I'm very Saturnian and I'm ruled by Saturn and Jupiter. So very interesting. It's funny that I would like that, I think. So if you've been watching some of my lives, you know that Uranus is the reason I knew Trump was going to win the presidency. Now, I'm going to give this disclaimer. This is not in any way a political experience. This is not in any way a political preference. I have no political preferences. I see the future. I know what each path looks like, right? This is about the collective. I don't hold this. So my prediction was simply a prediction, and I'm going to say things throughout this that I see, and some of them are going to be political, but they are not my political stance. And this is not like a debate. We're not going to fight. This is not like you can agree, you can disagree, you can take it, you can leave it. I'm okay with all of that. Beyond everything, we're going to be respectful and understanding that this is what I see, and I have no attachment to it. Like it's what it is. And so I knew that Uranus was going to be the catalyst for Trump winning in my prediction, if you follow that. Now, Uranus is an interesting planet because the last time it crossed the path of Pluto, this is so good. The last time Uranus and Pluto met in a beautiful dance in the sky was around 1965, 1966. I'll give you just a moment to go back in time. And we can tell from that time that there was a great awakening. And all of my spiritual people here and all of my healers and all of my woo people are going to know that this great awakening has been upon us. We have been waiting for this, and we have been feeling this. You may have noticed that more people are turning deeper into spirituality. More people are returning to the church. More people are giving themselves to Christ and getting baptized. Now, I want to say neither one of those is better than the other. They're all the next part of someone's journey for their own evolution and their path. But you can tell that there is a more spiritual, religious experience all over. I might not get through this training with this cough. And if you remember correctly, back in 1965 and 1966, there was a lot of societal upheaval. And this is because Pluto and Uranus is the transition from the old and the new. So in 1965, I'm just going to go through some things. You're going to know these all. 1965, Martin Luther King Jr. led a march just down the road from me in Alabama. It's Selma, Alabama, to push for voting rights. In 1965, there was this Vietnam War. Not so popular. Nobody really liked it. It was a bad time because everyone had deeply ingrained opinions and pardon me, there was a lot of division. There was a lot of division, much like there is now. We had space exploration. The Soviet Union launched the Venera 3. It was a space probe toward Venus. The Shelby GT350 Mustang debuted. Joe Namath signed a record deal, like a record-breaking deal with the Jets. Not a record deal. And Winston Churchill died. That man had been around forever. The National Organization for Women, or NOW, was founded. There was a mass shooting at the University of Texas and a mass shooting of nursing students in a Chicago dorm. Medicare began in the USA, and Ronald Reagan was elected governor. Interesting. Because what this spurred on, well, was many things. Many different branches of society forming and creating new systems and going in different ways. But It was the hippie movement. It was like the peace and love and tripping and LSD and the spiritual exploration and hallucinogenic exploration. People became more spiritual, they became more experimental, and they became more love focused. They understood and empathized more than any other time with their fellow human. This is something we can see going on now, and this is something that we can see that once again many people are struggling with. And so because of that, we're going to go through it again. We're going to break the structures, we're going to rebuild it, just like in the 60s, mid 60s. There were too many structures, too many barriers, too many boundaries. Too much limitation had been placed on people in society. And it felt confining. It felt inauthentic to our soul, to our spirit. I mean, I wasn't there then, but maybe I was. And it was a huge societal rebellion across the world. There was a movement of humanity, of empathy in society. There was a movement of the collective in unity that we had never seen before since tribal times. And tribal times only had it within their tribe. I mean, those people would go after other tribes, obviously. Now, Uranus is attributed with change. It's the change maker, it's the great awakener, the rebellion, the independence, it's shock. Uranus overturns anything it deems outlived that has outlived its utility or usefulness. Now, Uranus all right, where was I? Uranus rules over innovation, especially in science and technology. It rules over eccentricity. We're going to see lots of eccentricity from people. Upheaval, obviously, and raw genius. So, because Uranus rules the sign of Aquarius, the water bearer, so this amplifies the energies that we're going to be experiencing, because it's like doubling down on that exact energy. Like, you want a potent energy, put Uranus with Aquarius. Now, Uranus can make things erratic and unpredictable, but it can also make it easier to accept the energy for the new age that is being created. And it does this in real time. And it does it because it has to smooth out the energy. It has to provide a way to make the transformations it's bringing happen. Because otherwise we would have people fighting them. So there's going to be a lot of people that understand what is happening has to happen. And there's going to be a lot of people that are against it. But because the energy is self-producing, because the energy is self-productive, even in its own destruction, it's productive. It makes it easier, collectively and individually. So now we're finally at Aquarius. And Aquarius is an air element. Now, a lot of people think it's a water element because it's the water bearer, but it's not. It's the vessel for the water. And because it's an air element, it's going to be primarily focused around people's thinking. And so this is a time when there's going to be new ideas. And this is a time when people's thinking is going to change. This is a time when people's thinking is going to become more progressive, no longer rely on what has been or what used to work. It's going to be a little more creative, a little more out of the box, a little more philosophical, a little more spiritual. But because it's an air planet, because it's signed, because it's an air element, forgive me, because it's an air element, it's going to be primarily thinking based. And when we're talking about something that's thinking based, this is how manifesting is going to happen. So for all of my manifesting people out there, now more than ever, that thinking and those words and those creations are coming from that space of thought. Now, I told you that we were dealing with many outer planets, some moving faster and some moving slower. So Saturn is also a ruler of Aquarius. And Saturn is the planet of restriction and time. Now, Saturn withholds things. It withholds things for a long time. It will hold back until you've learned the lessons. It will hold back until it's completely ready. It will hold back until you're completely ready. So, Saturn, a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people have a bad idea about it because of their Saturn return, and we have several of those. But really, what the key here is that Saturn is about restriction, it's about timing, and it's about learning. And it's really a tough planet to engage with because it's relentless. So when you put that type of energy on Aquarius, and then when you put the energy of Uranus on Aquarius, you can see how that can be a trying time. You can see how that forces transformation. We're adding Pluto into the mix. And being a planet of restriction, of time and waiting, it results in a gift. Saturn always brings a gift, and that is the beauty of Saturn. It will push you big and it will deliver big. I went through my Saturn return, and after that, my gift from Saturn, right? Saturn always comes bearing gifts, was that I went from single to married in 4 months. And that was what I had wanted. Not the 4 months part. I didn't know that was going to happen. But I had wanted to get married. It was part of the way through my Saturn return. Now it's interesting. Very interesting, because I didn't really see that one there. So that's kind of how Saturn works. And Saturn is one of those outer moving planets that we're taking into consideration here. So, because Aquarius rules the 11th house, which is the house of community, the house of people, the house of humanity, small groups, big groups, all of the groups, it's everyone as a whole. Remember the meta level. And the 11th house is all about community and groups and people. And because of that, Aquarius is very forward thinking in its innovation and its creativity. And in these periods, we will see great creativity come out of it. There will be art like never before. We're going to see media like never before. We're already seeing the advent of AI rushing in and taking over. We're already seeing a new level of AI art, a new level of ways to use electronics, ways to use technology. And this is where we're going to see more of that, because that pardon me, that is one of the things that is ruled by Aquarius. And so as it rules over the internet, over technology, over humanity, over the human collective, all of these things are going to merge. All of these aspects are key players in what the next 20 years looks like. And so with this forward thinking, with this innovation, with this creativity, we're going to see advancements like we haven't in a very long time. So over the last 20 years, as I mentioned, we looked at Pluto and Capricorn, which was primarily financial based. It was money based. Capricorn is a very like capitalistic, loves money, loves grounded things, loves business. And remember that I said each house wants to do better than the house before it. And the house before it, you go through that house and you bring those lessons to the next house. To the next house. And that is where things start spiraling up. So when we've looked at money, there's still work to do there. Just because it is Pluto is out of Capricorn does not mean that the work is over, unfortunately. But also some of the work from Aquarius has already started. It's been going on for years. There's this in-between period where we can feel an energy ending and the next wave is coming toward us. And that's a lot of what's been happening for the past few years. But because we're moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius, the Capricorn energy has done all that it can do for us. We have learned the lessons. We have been through the experiences. And if we haven't, when we are in Aquarius with Pluto, we're going to finish that. It's going to happen. So if you haven't learned all the lessons, don't worry. There's still time. It's not like you don't get booted off the planet, right? Now, Aquarius brings with it the aspect of community, like I said, and at that intersecting of ideals and values and money as a community. And this is where it gets really important, because as we move deeper into this, we have to and we will re-examine how money has been handled, delegated, and the power and dispersal of it. There's a lot of responsibility there. And to me, this is the really exciting part, because over the next 20 years, the entire structure of money is going to shift. It's going to shift. It's going to change. It's going to be sooner than 20 years, right? Because in 20 years, the period ends. But as we go through this, we're going to start to see our regard for money change. We're going to start to see the position that we give money and the power that we give to money change. And we're going to start to see humanity to be the center point, not money. In Capricorn, money was the center point. There is going to be no other way to fix the structures and the systems if we are not looking at the people, at the community, at what is best for everyone. Absolutely everyone. And we have to come together as a collective to make that energy work. That is not something that just a few can do. That is not something that just a minority can accomplish. And this is why you've seen so many people waking up. This is why you've seen so many people moving toward collective care, concern. There's no way this will happen in the individualistic state that we existed in Capricorn. And we must start to calibrate ourselves. And we will calibrate because this is evolutionary. And we'll be on the same page as a majority in unity, in a very common collective thread that unites us all. And that's very important moving forward because we haven't had that in such a long time. And in fact, I would even say that recently with the election, we've never seen more division, more misunderstandings, more separation, more I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong, more just, it's just the two sides bullnosing each other and there's no movement. It's very hard-nosed in the energy, and it's very, I don't know how to put it in words. It's immobilizing, but it's just not moving. It's a very stagnant, stuck, dead stop. And that's going to shift. That's going to be one of the things that has to shift, right? Because we've been doing this for a long time. We've been operating under an old system. For us to break this, we have to move into a new system. We have to move into a way where we see our differences and we find a way through them. And we will. It can feel like we aren't right now, but we will. Absolutely. So we're almost wrapping up here. I want to talk about the things that Aquarius is going to do. The things that you're going to see happening over the next 20 years. And these are the exciting things, right? Not the things that are the rebellion and the upheaval and the revolting. These are things that are going to get very interesting. And you're going to want to pay attention here because there is going to be massive amounts of money to be made here. So that's one of the things about Aquarius is it is the water bearer and it will pour out absolute abundance, absolute wealth. We are moving into a time of wealth, but not just moving into a time of wealth. We're moving into a time of the greatest transfer of wealth. And that's what's so important because we've seen it change. So the changes are coming to the internet. Obviously, Aquarius rules the internet, and especially social platforms. So you're going to see new social platforms come up, but you're going to see massive changes to the social platforms we're already using. There's going to be a shift in power around money and who's like top tier. So you remember in the Industrial Revolution, the J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers, all of those people were top tier. They owned everything. They owned the oil, they owned the trains, they owned the land, they owned the steel mills, they owned all of it. That was then. And that period lasted a long time because that period led to the period of the corporation, the conglomerate, and the way we view things and the way the world works right now. But if you look around, you can see that crumbling. You can see things changing, and we aren't quite sure where they're going yet, but they're changing. And so there's going to be a shift in who is the top tier. So in a couple of decades, we'll have seen the crumbling and the last vestiges of the Industrial Revolution. It doesn't mean every single thing will be gone, but it will be so minuscule and it will hold so much less power. And the big monopolies that they built up are going to get broken. And that's going to make things better for so many people. So we're firmly now planted in the digital age, and this is where everything is going to boom. We've moved from the space age, which started around 1957, into the information age. And we see that everywhere. Everywhere we look, people are selling information. Information has now become, it's everywhere. It's become, not, I don't want to say commoditized, but we've come to view information differently. We've come to experience information in a different way than ever before. And that's going to change again throughout the digital age. Information has actually become transactional. It's become a currency piece, and we're going to see digital become the currency piece. And that's even beyond crypto. You're going to see more digital things. We think the internet is at this like peak period, but it's not. There is so much more coming still. Now, the most incredible thing about the digital age is that the currency of the digital age is available to everyone freely. And it also coincides with the decaying of the industrial age, which I really love. I really love that, right? We're seeing new ways of things being done every day. We're seeing new cars. We're seeing new ways to do things. I'm really looking for the next type of like airplane that we have. That's going to be really fascinating. Will that come in the age of Aquarius? I don't know, but I think there are going to be some changes to aeronautics. I think there are going to be some changes to the way we travel in aircraft. It's not going to be spaceship or anything. It's going to be modification. It's going to be upgrades. It's going to be there's going to be something done that is going to perform better. So, and that's my own like prediction. I didn't pull that out of any astrology. These are just the things that I see. Now we've been working and we've still been clinging to the work patterns and the work habits of the industrial age. But as we've seen since about 2010, we've been getting away from that. We have been getting away from and letting go of that work harder way of life, because that's what the industrial age was. You traded your life and your time for money. And the digital age doesn't operate that way. And the people who are still hanging on to the industrial paradigm, the people who are trying to work harder to stack cash, the people who are trying to do things the way they've always been done, are going to have the hardest time of all here, because they are going to be lost at sea. They're going to be a dying breed. Literally, they're going to be the outliers. It's no longer that the digital entrepreneurs and the online entrepreneurs and the influencers, and those are no longer going to be the outliers. Celebrities are going to be the outliers. It's actually an entire shift in the hierarchy and status of where we put our attention, where we put our money, and how we generate that money. And so, because we are considering the whole more than the individual, a lot of things are going to shift. A lot of things are going to become more open. A lot of things are going to become more available to people in many different ways across all types of industries. And the one thing that has to happen for this to actually take place is there has to be a majority of people, a majority of people that have their needs met, right? So like in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's a lot of people that are not getting their needs met now. And that's primarily, this is not political, that's primarily why the election went the way it did. You see, if you look at the election from a spiritual space, Kamala embodied, Kamala, sorry, I say her name wrong all the time. I can't like. Kamala embodied a lot of the Aquarian things, but her chart wasn't going to make that happen. She embodied the collective, she embodied the progressive, she embodied the ideologies and the idealistic things of where society is going. But because there was, and this isn't up for debate, this is just the way the numbers played out, because there was a minority there, that meant there was a majority of people who did not have their basic human needs met and their basic human rights. And for us to get to that next ideology, to that next level, to that next space, which is going to look a little different than what she was intending because it's a different path, we have to get people to have their needs met. This is basic human philosophy, right? Everyone deserves to live a life. We did not come here to suffer, but yet we have created our own suffering. And the age of Aquarius is here to redirect that energy, to correct the energy. We've gotten, I don't want to say we've gotten so far off course because every path leads to the same destination. But man, oh man, have we made it tough on ourselves, have we not? And I'm talking about collectively. There should be more people. There has never been easier access to wealth, and it's increasing as we get into the age of Aquarius. And yet, to see that there are still people struggling, working and overworking, it breaks my heart. It truly does. Like, I want the world to be fixed financially, like I do. So, with that being said, because these people must be brought up out of the depths of the old system, right? Because they are the depth and they're the weight that is keeping the ceiling. So if you look at it this way, the people who don't have their needs met, and this means nothing. I'm just using this as an illustration. The people who don't have their needs met, they are here. And think of this like a balloon, right? The people who have their needs met and who want progression and collectiveness, they're up here. Well, the weight down here is too much to allow the ceiling to come up. It's too much to allow the balloon to rise. So we have to bring these people up so that everyone can come up. This is not about a few coming up. This is about everyone coming up. This is about everyone getting a better life. This is about everyone getting a better lifestyle. About everyone getting their needs met, more fulfillment, more space to create because it's a creative time, more space to think because thinking is the energy that is going to change the things. So we have to bring people up out of those lower depths to have that. And that's going to be the primary job of Aquarius and Uranus and Pluto and Saturn and Neptune, all of those moving outer planets. They are doing the work. And with that, we are going to see the greatest transfer of wealth all over. But it's not going to be it's not going to be like it was where it all goes to one person. It's a dispersal. And that's really great, right? Everyone is going to be willing to do things in a different way. And we've not yet hit that critical mass. That is where the work is being done. That is where things are going to be difficult for the next few years. And this is where the power that we've given to few is going to come back to us. You see, we gave the power to the corporations. We gave the power to the politicians. We gave the power to the governments and to the towns and to the people making the TV dinners. So we would have something different and it would be easier. It was the way of the future. But in doing that, we gave away our health and we gave away our sovereignty, our autonomy. We are trading things that we don't want to trade. And that's stopping. That's all stopping now. Because we are now going to be a more focused and humane and humanity-centered people, we are no longer going to tolerate things like toxic food, We're no longer going to tolerate using only medicine and pharmaceuticals to heal. Don't get me wrong, medicine and pharmaceuticals are astounding. They're amazing. They save lives. But there's also a place where it's been overused. There's also a place where people have to decide on groceries or medicine. And that goes against the ideals of Aquarius. So there's a lot of things there that are going to change. TV and entertainment are going to change. Our level and humanity and care over our neighbors, our neighborhoods, and our communities. We're going to be more community centric, which is going to be interesting. I think we're even going to start to get more community centers and third places. So if you don't know what third places are not your home, which is your primary place, not your work, which is your secondary place. They're a third meeting place. So in Europe, they have a lot of squares. These are cafes. These are places people can go and gather without spending money to just commune with one another, just to be with one another, just to see their neighbors. So there are less strangers and there's more accountability and things become safer. It's a beautiful thing. The education system is going to get a makeover because we've handed over a lot of power there. And the old ways of educating aren't producing the results that we want. Homeschooling has shown that people are very dissatisfied with this. I don't know what the educational system is going to look like. It's very interesting to me. Government and the way it operates is going to change on all levels. All levels in 20 years are not going to look like it looks today. And here's the one that I like. The idea and the ideal of what we consider to be beautiful is going to change. I love that. I love that for women. I love that for aesthetics. We've gotten into this no color space. Everything is gray. Everything is neutral. We're going to move into a more colorful era. Remember? The peace, love, and harmony was all about colors, right? All about the kaleidoscope of colors. And also what we hold as the ideal of valuable, what we consider valuable, where we put our values, what our values are, all of those are going to change. There's going to be a great overhaul there. So this brings us to the end, right? Like we've made it through all of the things. I know it was a very long training. It was very in-depth. You may have to go back and watch it. You might want to take notes. Take the time to reflect on where your future interests lie. Take the time to reflect on the changes that are going to be coming. Take time to reflect on where you see yourself going, because we're going to take everything, all of the knowledge that I've brought you up until now, and in our next class, our final class, you are going to get your plan forward. We're going to figure out exactly where your Aquarius is, what it means for you. We're going to intersect that with what Aquarius is bringing. We're going to intersect that with where the money is to be made. And we're going to literally get your foresight for the future. Get where you want to go. Get how you want to get there. Get what it's going to look like, right? Get what's going on for you. And additionally, we're going to look at what house this is actually going to be happening in for you. So every house has a different meaning, and it's going to have a different focus on a different area of life for everyone. But for us to get there and for us to understand that, you have to understand where we came from with Pluto and Capricorn. And then you have to understand what really is going on with Aquarius and the history of what Aquarius has looked like through the ages. Are there going to be wars? I hope not. Will there be revolts? Absolutely. And we've been seeing that. And it's going to be entirely social upheaval in some ways. And that's a good thing, right? Because we cannot stay the same. And so we've looked at all of this today. And so reflect on that. Take some notes. think about what you see in the future, what you would like, where you would like to land, all of those things, and bring those to the next class. Because the next class, I'm going to be reading charts, I'm going to be going deep, and we are going to get it done. It is going to be so good. I promise you. And we are currently in Aquarius, and it is getting better and better and better. I feel the energy deeply, and I'm doing all kinds of readings for people, and they're turning out like just phenomenal. So much is going on. I will see you on the next class. If you enjoyed this, invite a friend to it, share it with somebody. Uh, take a take a snap and share it. Take a screenshot and put it on socials. Let people know that it exists, and let me know, or let whoever shared this with you know that you want access to the next workshop. It's going to be huge. I promise you don't want to miss it. Thank you for being here. Sherry Hemstreet of thesherryhemstreet.com.